What up, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy Football 2018. It is finally here. The keepers are all in. The draft is set for Saturday at 7. More about the draft later, but let's first get to the good stuff, the keepers. So all the keepers are now stored in the all-important Google spreadsheet, and I know I've said it a million times, I'll say it again. The league information year to year will now be stored in that spreadsheet. It'll make it very easy to track everything. So if you have a question, go to the link. It will always be up on the league homepage. You can also find the link right here. And yeah, if you have a question, go there, because the past 2 weeks I have gotten so many random texts from y'all for questions that you really shouldn't need me for. What are the keeper rules for this year? What are the keeper rules for next year? What round was Carson Wentz drafted in? What draft picks have been traded? What time is the draft?
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say what one more goddamn time.
So in the future, go to that spreadsheet. The answer is there. You can find it and read it yourself. And for anyone who is reading challenged, I know we have some Hokies in the league. Understandable. I'll be happy to walk you through it.
Wool, host, annual, host, annual, annual needing of
Yeah.
So all the keepers are listed in the spreadsheet as 2-year keepers. Remember, we're doing the contract thing now. So each keeper is listed for 2018 and 2019. If that's not the case, just let me know before the draft, but I just kind of assumed everyone wants their guy for 2 years. So, all right, let's go ahead and reveal the keepers. We'll go in just to order the draft picks for Saturday. So let's get started with the number 1 pick, Johnny Fitz. So Fitz keeping Alvin Kamara, running back for the Saints, a no-brainer selection here. Kamara is a first-round talent, especially PPR, goodness gracious. And Fitz is getting some great value here. One quick plug again for our Google spreadsheet. Fitz was the only one to enter his keeper in the spreadsheet, so well done. But just kudos for trying, because actually Fitz entered Kamara as a 10th round keeper, when in fact if you look at the draft board from last year, he is a 13th round keeper. So part of me wants to just let Fitz devalue his own player, but he has the toilet bowl, he's been through enough, so Kamara is actually a 13th rounder, so you're getting even more value than you originally thought. So between Kamara and the number 1 overall pick, Fitz is looking quite good to start the season. Next up, we got Greg Bernardi picking 2nd in this year's draft, and we have our first reach. Greg, in his defense, if you look at his roster, it was slim pickings. But Greg's probably the first person in many, many years to keep a Lions wide receiver not named Calvin Johnson. So Greg's keeper choice, ESPN ranked number 23 wide receiver, Marvin Jones Jr. So last year I questioned Greg's Alex Smith keeper choice, and he came out of the gates on fire. So who knows, maybe Marvin Jones Jr. will do the same. But yeah, when you compare him to the other keepers in the league, Greg is starting in a bit of a hole that he's going to have to climb out of. But champions are made in the draft, so who knows, maybe Greg can make up with it with some great draft picks. But at least he's got his wide receiver 3 figured out. So Greg with the Marvin Jones Jr. selection. Next up, picking 3rd in this year's draft, we have Stephen Griffith, and his keeper selection is Dak Prescott. And you might have been able to guess that. That's a homer pick if I've ever seen one. Dak's coming off a season which can really only be described as mediocre for the 9-7 Cowboys, and there doesn't seem to be a ton of reason for optimism in Dallas going into the season. I mean, they're in the division with the reigning Super Bowl champs, so it's going to be tough enough on them. But if you hear it from Griff, Dak is going to have an amazing season, and the Cowboys are poised for a Super Bowl run.
Guys, this is the year we go all the way. All the way. All the way. All the way. All the way.
And I'm sure the Cowboys will have a great preseason. They might even start off the year like 2-0.
Bring out the champagne. It's in the bag. The fat lady has left the building.
But then, like every year, there's going to be a Cowboys collapse. They'll lose like 4 straight games, and Griff will just be clinging to his delusions of Dak leading them to a championship.
But look out, they're going to erupt. They're going to bust loose. Yeah, they're going to do it. They're going to bust loose.
They're a powder keg juggernaut.
But Griff is so well set up for this season. Somehow he finagled his way into an extra 3rd-round pick, 2 extra 5th-round picks, and an extra 6th-round pick. So he is going to have himself a fun Saturday, picking a lot in the early rounds of the draft. So, between some value with his keeper and all those extra draft picks, watch out for Griff this year. Next up, picking 4th in the draft, we have Andrew Negri, and his keeper selection is Davante Adams. So, a very solid choice here. A ton of value because Adams is such a late-round pick. And, he's a great wide receiver on a pass-happy offense in Green Bay. What more could you want? So, not necessarily a keeper that will win him a championship, but a very good wide receiver for his team. And, not the sexiest pick, but it'll get it done. Next up, picking 5th in the draft, we have Mike Melson, whose keeper choice is Matt Ryan. So, Ryan coming off of a pretty mediocre year for the Falcons. He was the 15th overall quarterback, so perhaps the definition of mediocre. And he's a solid player, nothing special. He'll provide some value at quarterback. But not a sexy keeper choice either, much less sexy than Davante Adams. In fact, Ryan is a pretty boring keeper choice.
What I think I'm seeing is the human equivalent of a flaccid penis.
So Mike knows what he's going to get out of Ryan, probably an okay year at quarterback. So he'll have some making up to do at the draft. We'll see what happens on Saturday and who he can pair with Ryan at QB. Next up, picking 6th in this year's draft, we have John Fornecka, and his keeper choice is David Johnson. So John had a pretty tough choice this year between Todd Gurley and David Johnson as his keeper. And DJ just provided a little bit more value being a much later round pick. And plus, John and DJ, they've been through so much together. He's had him on his team for like 4 years, so I have a feeling there was, a sentimental value there too. We'll see if Johnson bounces back. He was injured last year. He should be very fresh. He played like 10 minutes of football last year. So we'll see if he can bounce back from injury and return to his old form. But it looks to be some good value for John at running back there. All right, on to the playoff teams from last year. Next up, picking 7th, we have Pat Jordan, your AFC regular season champ from last year. And you know his yearly team name of Brown to the Crown, so his keeper choice, of course, Antonio Brown. There you go. So Brown, an awesome wide receiver, of course, and great value as I think an 8th-round keeper for Pat. He's going to put up huge numbers barring injury, but what Pat has to contend with this year is the Madden curse. So Antonio Brown gracing the cover of Madden, and every game Pat's going to be nervous seeing if he falls victim to the Madden curse. And it was interesting going back and looking at the players on the cover of Madden year by year, and there is an eerie number of season-ending injuries the next season. So we'll see what happens. It was a no-brainer choice for Pat, but we'll see if the fantasy/Madden gods are against you this year. All right, I am up next, picking 8th on Saturday, and my keeper choice is Le'Veon Bell, my boy. He has some good value at running back. He is an 11th round keeper choice and arguable as the number 1 running back for this year. We'll see. But, he did his normal song and dance with the Steelers in the offseason, which I hate, where he wants a long-term contract. They say no and slap him with the franchise tag. He says, fine, maybe I'll just retire, and I have a panic attack. Then the Steelers say, well, you're still getting paid some, so stop your crying. And then Le'Veon eventually caves. So I wish they would just give him a long-term contract so we could just all feel better.
Pay that man his money.
But Le'Veon is a PPR beast. We'll see if he continues to put up his normal gaudy numbers this season. But a good start at running back for my team. Next up, picking ninth, we have our runner-up from last year, Drew Melson, and he has our third quarterback keeper in our league. But unlike the other quarterbacks, his is running the most potent offense in the NFL, which is good for him. And this team probably has the best chance of winning the Super Bowl because they just won it last year. Some have called them the reigning Super Bowl champs, if you will. So if you don't know the team, that's the Philadelphia Eagles.
You're goddamn right.
So Drew is keeping Wentz in the 7th round, so some good value there at quarterback for him. And yeah, he's coming off injury though, so we have a couple keepers coming off injury. But all reports are saying Wentz will be just fine, and I'm sure we're all just super excited to watch the repeat. So so Wentz, a solid keeper choice for Drew at quarterback. And finally, picking 10th, we have our champ from last year, Stephen Cole. And his keeper is Odell Beckham Jr. So Odell, some great value for Cole, super late round pick, and a top-notch wide receiver. But interesting that is our third keeper coming off of significant injury. So a bit of a wild card, we'll see. But if anyone was paying attention to the social media in the offseason, there was a little photo of Odell circulating. And pretty clearly is chilling out, holding a blunt there. And if you saw the grainy footage that follows, you can clearly make out a little white trail of powder. We all have a guess, I'm sure, at what that could be. So, Cole keeping Odell's interesting because he's the same guy who fell in love with Josh Gordon and just wanted to keep Josh Gordon year after year. And Cole will probably draft Josh Gordon this year, more than likely. So I'm pretty sure Cole just selects his keepers based on who did the most coke in the offseason. That's what it seems to be. But hey, it's working out for him. He is the reigning champ. So I guess it's a good offseason training regimen. So we'll see, if Odell can bounce back to his old self this season. All right, fellas, that does it. That's everybody's keepers. I'm going to go ahead and update the ESPN site. I'll update the Google spreadsheet. And yeah, can't wait to get the season underway and see who pulls out the title this year. We have to make up for the tragedy that happened in the fantasy playoffs last year. Even though Cole will tell you his star-studded cast of Joe Flacco, Deion Lewis, and Marquise Goodwin deserve the title, we all know better.
What happened here was a miracle, and I want you to fucking acknowledge it.
So we'll have to wait and see who can dethrone Cole. The biggest step will be on Saturday. I'm sure we'll post on the league page throughout the week, figure out the exact plans for the day. But get in your research this week and can't wait to see everybody for the draft on Saturday.